everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast.
I'm Tony Southcott.
I'm Albert Berg.
We're coming to you today with a 1931 classic called Frankenstein. I'm sure every single person in the audience has heard of this one. Most of you guys have seen it, or at least seen Young Frankenstein, so you know what's happening.
Rolling on through Classic Monster Month. We're in the middle week of that month, Tony. We've done The Wolfman and Dracula already, and this is our third movie. Next week we'll be doing The Mummy, and we'll be closing it out with Creature from the Black Lagoon, hitting all of the highlights, I think, from the early Universal Monster era.
I'm sure that you could probably find some other ones that fit into this category, but these are like the most iconic ones. These are like the Mount Rushmore type monsters. They're pretty much every monster from the movie Monster Squad, which is on Netflix right now, and you guys should all watch it. I feel like you would love that movie, but we're not here to talk about Monster Squad. We're here to talk about Frankenstein.
Hopefully we'll have lots of Halloweens going forward, where we can talk about other movies. There's many more Universal Monster movies that were sequels and spin-offs and Son of, which the ending of this one actually was sort of like, the Son of Frankenstein. Hey, do you get it? Do you get it? We might make another one.
Yeah. Wasn't Bride of Frankenstein next? Or was there a Son of Frankenstein?
Yeah, I think it was. Bride of... Man, I
keep hearing
watched
that's
the
really
beginning
good.
of Bride of Frankenstein. It's not great.
See, I've talked to a lot of people this week that actually like the movie as a whole better than they did the 1931 Frankenstein.
It opens up with this really weird, like... not meta. How would I describe it? Like, it's Mary Shelley and talking to the two guys who she hung out with all the time. I forget, Lord Byron and the other guy. Yeah, I'm sure somebody. It's. I guess the other guy's name would be Shelley. Whatever the guy's name was that she was married to / sleeping with for quite a bit of her career. And she's like. They're like, that was an incredible story you've just told us about Frankenstein. And she's like, but that is not all. Frankenstein did other things after that. And it's like this super corny, awkward segue. Like, why are we bringing Mary Shelley into this? Can't we just...
I don't think we have any room to criticize segues.
It's a segue between movies, though. Like, I thought, watching that, I just assumed that like, this movie had that framing device because they just pick it up in the next one, like, oh, I guess she was... But no, like, we're just supposed to assume that she was telling him this story the whole time, and then she's like, I've got more to say about this Frankenstein fellow.
Yeah, if we watch that, you should skip that so it doesn't taint the whole movie.
Well, no, that doesn't... It's not just that. Like, there's, like, that really annoying old woman who screeches like this about everything.
Once again, we don't have
that movie, Tony. I didn't even finish watching that movie. But I think that Frankenstein is better from what I've seen. The original Frankenstein, 1931. It's certainly better than Dracula.
Yeah,
like you opened my eyes to just how much of a disappointment Dracula really was for me. With everything, man. This movie's, I mean, I don't want to oversell it because it is old and it, has sort of campiness and stuff going on. But if you can sort of get your mind into that mindset, it's incredible, like, cinematography and, the acting is okay. It's a little bit, sort of stilted and stuff. But the way this is shot and the way the story is told, the way they adapted it so that, it's not exactly like the book, but it has enough of the book in it where you can recognize the story and still get, the movie can tell a story in an hour and 10 minutes that is compelling and interesting, and, maybe it goes off book for, some of the time, but it's its own thing and it works on its own really, really well, I thought.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it is it just has so much more life to it. Like, there's a lot more people. It's a lot more than just, like, a couple crypt scenes and all that. Like, some of the sets were shared. Like, I recognize that long staircase and all that. But there's just so many more people, like, in this movie. There's a lot better writing. Just everything about it, like, from top to bottom was better. I like Bela Lugosi, but, man, like, they could not make that work compared to what they did with Boris Karloff in this.
Well, Boris Karloff does really great physical acting in this. I don't know very much about him, but like he embodies this character never speaking a line, which is a problem Bela Lugosi had. He's like, I'm not going to speak. What is this? I talk. Why should I not be able to talk? And Boris Karloff, I don't have any idea how he felt about it, but he gives the Frankenstein monster life through his motions and nothing but the motions. And you see his awkwardness and his sort of fear of the world and not understanding and, his lashing. It all comes through really, really well.
Yeah, he really makes it so that it's kind of a tragic monster by the end.
Well, yeah, and that was, I think that wouldn't have come across the same way if it hadn't been played so well. It's certainly in the script. They've definitely, the director of this, actually, I did a little reading before we recorded, and it was interesting finding out he'd come off with some other stuff that the studio was really excited to work with him, and they were basically like, whatever you want to do, we want you to do it because you're the best. It was sort of one of those like Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino, like we'll make a way for you to be happy because we want you to make a movie for us. And so he was excited about Frankenstein, but he came on and the script had Frankenstein as much more of just a monster in the sense that he wasn't sympathetic. He was just, rampaging and killing and stuff like that. And he said, no, we need to, he actually rewrote the script himself and said, we need to bring more pathos to this creature, or it won't work. And it was a great decision on his part.
Yeah, it would just be like another forgotten monster movie from the 30s.
I don't know if it would have been forgotten, but, it would have been like Dracula, where it was, for us anyway, it was just sort of a mess. Kind of all over the place, not really, didn't have a lot of nuance. And this had a ton of nuance. Even in the character of Frankenstein, Henry Frankenstein, by the way, that was like a weird change for me.
Yeah.
Because you have, what's his girlfriend's name, /fiance, /eventually wife. Anyway, she's talking with his best friend and calling him Victor, and I'm like, wait.
Yeah, that's not Victor Frankenstein.
Why did you call the other guy Victor and call Frankenstein Henry? Mortem Post tweeted at us, because I was actually asking this question on Twitter. She's like, well, I heard that they wanted to make it sound less German, but...
There's so much German in this movie, though. There's people being like, "Oh, Fraulein," and there's an entire part where people are dancing in lederhosen.
Yeah, if that was an attempt to hide the fact that this is set in Germany, that was the only attempt they made, because everything else was very much like, yeah, this is happening in Germany, guys. The name of the school was all German. They had the German dancing. They had everybody. Yeah. They had barons and stuff, which I guess you can have barons in England and stuff, but it felt like it was just a very German-sounding setting. It was English language, but still, it wasn't like they were making much effort to hide, oh yeah, these guys in Germany. So,
yeah, and it's surprising that you would even, well, I guess it was post-World War I, but it was kind of that sweet spot between the two wars, where you'd think Germany wasn't as bad in the world standing by that point.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the situation was. It's very much like not quite like the change, but somewhat like the changes that they made in Dracula, where they, made Mina Harker be Dr. Seward's daughter and sent Renfield to be with Dracula rather than Jonathan Harker. Those things kind of, apparently they just felt like, yeah, we can change things up, and it didn't make that big of a deal. But it didn't ruin the movie. It wasn't like, this is taking me out of the movie. It's just sort of an odd choice that I was really confused by.
It was just a little bit jarring. It really was.
Yeah. But then you get used to it, and you're like, okay, I guess.
Most of the time they call him Frankenstein anyway, so it's not like they're screaming, Henry!
Except for when they're banging on the door. That's the one part where I was like, okay, this guy's name is definitely Henry, because they're banging on the door, asking me to let into the castle, and the one person's yelling, Frankenstein! The other person's yelling, Henry! 6 or 7 times, and I just wanted to be like, once they got done, I just wanted to keep yelling, Frankenstein! Henry!
That's what that was one part, just a slight goof up in the effects department. It's they were all bone dry when they came in.
They did do some stuff where they no, I'm thinking of a different thing. Never mind. Completely forget that. But yeah, it wasn't perfect, okay? But there was, from the standpoint of the cinematography especially, there was some really great stuff in this movie. Last week on the review of Dracula, I was like, well, I'm not expecting him to do any giant tracking shots or whatever, moving through several rooms. But then they do it in this movie, and I'm like, okay, now I'm even less sympathetic to the plight of Dracula, and it's just like, we're just going to set the camera on a tripod and not move it, and people sort of move around however they feel like. That's how it came across to me, and this movie does, like...
Just such a major difference between the two directors in this.
Yeah. You have these, not like... we're sort of spoiled now, where we've seen some really long, like 5 or 6 minute tracking shots. It's not quite like that, but it does, it'll move from one place to another and then sort of like go up close on somebody's face and to do a lot of really, complicated moves. Not super complicated, but especially considering at the time the equipment was bigger. It stands out and it works and it looks, really incredible. Sometimes it shakes a little bit. The camera, I don't know what kind of thing they're moving it on, but sometimes you'll see it kind of shake a little bit as they're moving the camera. But really conveyed a lot of, made the movie look a lot better and feel a lot more sort of impactful. I even liked the character of Frankenstein himself, even though he's a little bit of a caricature. He walks that line where he's back and forth between like, you will see, you called me crazy, but I will show you. And then he kind of like backs off and he's like, oh yeah, it did turn out that I was sort of, So, that wasn't a perfect character, but I think it didn't ruin the movie, and he's actually in it as an important major character. Of course, it's named after him, but I just thought that worked really well. A lot of the side characters worked really well with the dads and everything, where the dad's like, oh, he's off there cheating on you out in the wilderness or whatever. Yeah, right. Him and that, Fritz fellow, he didn't imply that. They were not that forward in the 1930s, but...
yeah, they were just straight up like, oh, he brought a woman out to that old windmill or whatever.
Yeah, but, like all of those...
Like, thanks, Dad, for the vote of confidence in my chastity.
Do what?
It's like, thanks, Dad, for the vote of confidence. I think that was his dad saying that, right? Like the Baron?
I think that was her dad.
Ah,
yeah. It was like the older guy who was kind of confused about what was going on. That was my impression of it anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was just mixing it up for a second.
But yeah, so it was really well done. Then you get to sort of the monster escaping, and that shot of the dad, because he plays with a little girl and has that one moment where she's showing him how to throw flowers into the lake, and because, again, really comes across really well, his sort of innocence and naivete and just kind of stupidity, honestly. He's like, oh, we can throw flowers in the lake. I'll throw flowers into the lake. I'll throw you into the lake. Just as sort of like a wee kind of spontaneous thing. Not like he's trying to hurt her. And she drowns. And another thing that I read that was really interesting, a lot of the cuts that they made, because they would actually censor these things pretty heavily, depending on what area they were sending them to the point where there's one cut of the film that's like 40 minutes long because of all the stuff they wanted him to remove.
That would be lame. I noticed that there were a few hard cuts in the middle of scenes that seemed kind of jarring, like with the little girl drowning and everything. It was just like he throws her in, and then all of a sudden it's just his reaction and his fear and him running away.
Well, that may have just been a little bit of, technique needing to catch up with the cinematography as far as like, the story not quite matching up. I'm willing to overlook some of that stuff. Maybe there's a missing shot, because I know that, a lot of these older movies have footage that's permanently lost. They only found the footage of the scene where he throws her into the lake in like 1980.
Really?
Which is kind of a long time ago now, but I mean, many years removed from when the film was made.
As far as, like, finding old footage, I wonder, like, how many of these old classics are just, like, sitting in a vault somewhere. Some of them could actually, like, be resurrected and turned into really great, into just great movies. Seems like maybe a majority of the ones back then, they weren't technically good. They probably had flawed scripts. But some of these really do hold up and endure.
Well, and, film is a fairly it's hard to preserve, especially in the form that it was back then, Just why I think probably back in the day these were a lot clearer and stuff, and the transfers, that by the time they got to digital transfers and stuff, some of the film stock that they had degraded.
Yeah, like the way they made copies back then, it really wouldn't be that efficient.
But there was a director, I want to say from the 1920s, and I'm sort of talking off the top of my head, so I don't remember his name, but I remember that he was in the early era of Hollywood and making movies, and apparently, there's stills that survive of his movies, but nothing that he made has survived to the modern era, which is why film preservation is kind of such a big deal now, because people are like, listen, we were losing, incredible works of art because they weren't managed very well, or nobody's thought that they would be significant going forward, and didn't spend the money to preserve them like they needed to be preserved. So,
we've even lost movies from popular directors. Like Quentin Tarantino's first movie was lost, like in a fire. But I believe
if he put that thing on a thumb drive and uploaded it to YouTube, it would have been okay. Quentin, Mr. Film,
get back on that like 92 or 90, whenever you first made it. Get a big old thumb drive.
You know what I mean, though. Like, well, yeah, okay. So in '92, I'm sure film was the better medium by far. I don't even think they may have had like some very crude digital cameras at that point. But I'm a little bit.
They didn't really start even using digital cameras until I think like 28 Days Later was one of the first fully digital movies that went out.
I thought that okay, you may correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the very first movie shot digitally for Hollywood, sort of big budget movie, was actually Episode 1.
You're probably right on that, because I remember that there was a lot of talk about how they were going to have to get digital projectors and all this other stuff if they wanted to show it. Lucasfilm was kind of forcing that on everybody.
And now they're going the other way. Christopher Nolan's like, hey man, if you want to see my movie a week early, you better... Or no, I'm sorry, it's Quentin Tarantino who's like saying, you guys better put on some 70mm camera or projectors in your theater if you want to show my movie at the early showing. So I was a little bit perturbed. Christopher Nolan did an interview recently where he was just like, I mean, I get that he likes film, okay, but going to a movie theater and seeing a digitally projected movie is not the same as them putting a TV in a room and watching the TV, okay? There is more experience there than just that.
Yeah.
I don't... it just bugs me. The guy, I think, is talented. I've liked most of his movies. I even didn't hate Interstellar, but I felt like it was a little bit weak. But he's not knowledgeable about... He's got his hobby horse, and he's riding the hobby horse. And I'm not saying there's no advantage to film at all, but to say that, like, people aren't going to theaters anymore because you're not showing movies on film is just wrong.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, it's just not right.
It's because it costs $11 a person plus like $9 for popcorn and all that sort of stuff whenever you can sit in the comfort of your own home in front of your 55-inch TV that costs $1,000. Like, you could just do it so much more comfortably from home, and that's why people are going to less movies. Plus, we have Netflix. Plus, we've got thousands of other options for, like, finding any movie we want. And a lot of people aren't even consuming full movies anymore. Like, you and I are both, like, guilty of watching, like, Let's Plays and things almost on a daily basis.
I do that less so now just because of the time constraints and the fact that I have kids and I don't want to, like, have the swearing out in front of them as much. So I have less freedom for that.
I cut mine back a little bit just because it was just too much of a time sink. I was like, okay, I'm behind on this channel and this channel and this channel. And then I realized I could probably cut that channel and this channel and just focus on a couple things a week and actually have time to create my own content instead of thinking about other stuff. It's like how I pared back my podcast listening from like 21 podcasts down to like, I think 12 or 13.
But for me, the biggest thing about film and digital is that, like, you can distribute digital so much easier to the home. I mean, I know he wants people to go to theaters, and that's fine, but, like, I saw a movie this week that blew me away, Tony, from 1955 called Diabolique. And it was a French movie, black and white, way back in the day, subtitle and everything. and I probably wouldn't have seen that ever in a theater, because there's not any theater around here that's going to show that. So I had to go on Hulu and browse through the Criterion Collection and be like, oh, this sounds really interesting. And I watched it, I was like, that movie was amazing. I could have never discovered that, if it hadn't been digitized.
Even places like the Alamo and a lot of art house places might not pick up on that movie, because how often are you going to be able to get people to go to a 1950s movie with subtitles?
I don't know. I mean, Alamo does some really cool sort of retro, depending on, sort of theme months and stuff. So it's possible that you could get a showing of it, but it wouldn't be easy. I don't have an Alamo near me. I would have to be like, I want to go see this movie that I've never heard of before, that I've only read the description of. I'll go and put my coat on and venture out into the, bitter Florida winter to go to see this movie at the Alamo. Like, it's not going to happen. I don't know.
I also like that you can just distribute to more screens. Like, I went to the midnight showing of Transformers 2, and it was at a theater with all digital screens. And it had 10 screens at the theater, and 8 of them sold out. So they were just able to show it on 8 different screens instead of just being like the exclusive, only 1 screen or 2 screens max like back in the day. Like, whenever I camped out for Phantom Menace, we camped out for 3 days in a field just to make sure we got in on like one of those original 2 screens.
I'm really sorry that you had to see Transformers 2 in theaters. I had the same problem. That was the worst Transformers film, by the way. I defend a lot of stuff about Transformers, and I enjoyed some things about most of the movies, but that was awful.
I think the only thing I really enjoyed about that was the railgun.
I didn't even think that was all that cool. I kind of liked the opening sequence a little bit, and then Optimus Prime just started swearing out of nowhere, and I was like, I'm willing to accept a lot of stuff from Optimus Prime, but this is not really what I think he should be saying. It was odd. I don't know. It was
definitely out of character. It was out of character, and I couldn't care less about swearing, and I still thought it was out of character.
So, anyway, let's not talk about Transformers 2. Do we have anything more to say about Frankenstein? I feel like I didn't quite wrap that up well enough. We got off on film and stuff, and I'm not, again, nothing against film. One of my favorite theaters used to show movies on film until they shut down. But, yeah.
One of my friends is a projectionist, and he kind of misses having to do all the switchovers and setting up the trays and all that sort of stuff. It's like now it's just basically hitting play.
Well, we talked about that, I guess, last week or the week before, where there's just a lot of skills that were, interesting and really sort of involved to learn, and then they're just like, yeah, we don't need that anymore. Moving on, and you just got to move on, or, it's great that you know how to do things by hand or, whatever, but it's not actually relevant or helpful to anybody anymore.
Yeah. I'm honestly surprised that there aren't more movies like of the actual digital file being leaked out. Like, you'd think with all the digital copies out there, you'd see a lot less screeners on pirate sites and everything.
I think that their protection is pretty robust on those files.
And I'm sure it's probably tagged like somehow with the theater so that they could localize where it came from, but still.
Yeah, I think that they thought a lot about that before they switched over to digital. But I don't, Frankenstein, Tony. Are we done talking about Frankenstein?
I believe so. I think as far as like the different Frankenstein versions over the years, this fit pretty much as what I would think for the monster. Like I got nothing.
I gotta say, I want to shout out to that burning windmill.
Yeah.
Spoilers for those of you who haven't seen Frankenstein, kind of close to the end.
It's almost 100 years old.
But man, that is a beautiful, shot of a giant, I assume it's full size, Tony. It looks full size in most of the pictures, and just to set that on fire, and the vanes are still turning, and the windmill's, going up in flames, and it's like an incredible moment in cinema. Coupled with the fact that you do feel sympathy for the monster, and he's trapped in there, screaming for his life, terrified by the fire, which he's always been terrified by. You've seen him be terrified by the torches, and now he's surrounded by it.
Yeah, he's crushed and surrounded by it. That was brutal.
Just a great ending to a great film, and I highly recommend that if you have an interest in this era of filmmaking and these, monster movies, this one is for sure worth checking out.
Yeah,
apparently
$2.99 on Amazon.
Frankenstein's also worth checking out, so I guess we'll talk about that eventually. But
yeah,
not looking.
It's $2.99 on Amazon, or if you want to go to Daily Motion and fight with ambiguous legality in your moral compass, you can watch it there.
It's from 1931, all right, Tony?
Yeah, not a single person that worked on that movie is still alive to, earn royalties from it, I bet.
Yeah, it's copyright needs to change. That's the thing we've had before, but that stuff from 1931 should not still be under copyright. That's all I've got to say about that.
Yeah. We got Happy Birthday back. It's time to get these movies back.
Speaking of Happy Birthday, you have a new arrival in your family, do you not?
Yes, as of 5/17 this morning, my little niece, Kennedy Sterling, is now born and out in the world. I've been scrambling to take care of a bunch of stuff this morning so I can go see her.
That's crazy, man. That's
excuse me.
It's super exciting and super scary. You already have a nephew, right?
Yeah, but that's with my half brother, and Jason's an awesome guy. I love him and everything. It's I didn't know him until I was 20. This is my twin sister, my little sister. I call her my little sister because I am literally 1 to 2 minutes older than her. And I've known her since we were a mass of cells, literally. It's crazy, and it's my sister, and it's her first kid, and it's just so awesome. I've been hanging out with them a lot lately. On Sunday, I promised her we were going to see The Martian, even though I went and saw it with you. I went and saw it with her just because her husband has a thing where he hates the sound of crunching, so people in theaters are always just chugging popcorn next to him, and it just drives him crazy.
Oh,
so
okay.
I have to take sister to movies.
I thought you were talking about in the movie, he crunches through too much dirt or something. I was like,
no,
well,
no, it's all people are slobs, and they just go off on popcorn, and he can't tolerate that. So I take my sister to movies.
You can't eat popcorn quietly, Tony.
Yeah. Well, he eats it one kernel at a time, nice and slow, quietly. His own crunching doesn't bother him. It's other people's crunching.
Well, I'm just saying, saying that people are slobs because they enjoy eating popcorn. People may be slobs. I enjoy eating popcorn, Tony, and I am not a slob. And turning the camera around and showing you how messy this room is would absolutely not negate that. But, yes, eating popcorn by the handful is totally okay, and you should not feel bad about it.
No, I never do. I try to, curb it a little bit in front of him if we're, watching a movie at their house, but there are some people out there that are just obnoxious about it, and he just tries to avoid that. But it's so crazy, just 2 days ago she was pregnant, and as of this morning she's not.
And that's how that works.
I know, it's just weird whenever it finally happens, because we've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and my sister's just been ready for it to get over. They were lucky they decided to get air conditioning this summer, so she didn't have to go through, the middle of summer, all pregnant and everything. Or at least not without air conditioning.
I was gonna say, she was pregnant. I feel like she had to go through it pregnant if she wanted to have the kid.
But just doing that without air conditioning and everything, I can't even imagine how uncomfortable it was. But just seeing her while we were watching the Bronco game on Sunday and everything, where she's just ready, and then getting a call at 5 a.m. from my mom, and I was like, who the is calling me? And then realized it's got to be something like that. So it was an exciting call, even if I was kind of bumbling around and probably didn't sound very sensical on the phone.
You're not a morning person, Tony.
No, I am not a morning person.
That's what I've learned from working with you more, is you kind of shamble out of bed. Of course, you're not you don't sleep until noon or something, but you aren't like me where you're sort of waking up before your alarm clock goes off at 6:30.
No,
generally.
I've never really woken up before my alarm clock unless there was something wrong in the house or a cat waking me up. I'm not that type of person. I can do it, but I definitely don't enjoy those first 2 hours of being awake.
Well, hopefully that your little niece does enjoy her first 2 hours of being here. What'd you say her name was again?
Kennedy.
Kennedy.
Yep.
That's a girl?
Yep.
Okay.
It's an odd name to me too, but they were gonna name, if it was a boy, they were gonna name him Lincoln, and then like one of her coworkers joked, "Oh, if it's a girl, you should name her Kennedy," and then they decided they liked that. So I can't remember the middle name right now. I'm a bad uncle.
Oh, I thought you said Kennedy Sterling.
Sterling is her last name.
Oh, okay.
Because she is properly married and everything.
No, yeah, okay, I got that. I've had a long week. Well, not this week, Tony, but last week was a whole big mess of car problems that I had to deal with. That was so
on
much
top
fun.
of basically working for 2 weeks straight, because I really can't consider the film festival not working because of like the work we put into that. So everything was just, it was a lot, like 10 or 12 days of just straight up activity.
Yeah, I think we're getting back into a normal schedule. But
plus, you have this Friday off.
Yeah, I'm gonna go camp in the backyard. So did I tell the story what happened to the van while I was away in the last podcast? I don't think I did.
I think you mentioned it, but I don't think you actually said what happened.
Well, so my wife calls me from Florida when I'm in Colorado to tell me, "Oh, hey, I've broken down by the side of the road. The van transmission has gone out." And so I was like, "Okay." We don't have currently, and my car hadn't been working really. I couldn't start it for a while, and so that meant we had no working vehicle. So I said to her, I'm in Colorado, I can't do anything. She got rescued or whatever. And then because I'm sort of really pretty close to an auto parts store, I was like, I'll just work on the car and get what I need to fix the car, which turned out to be kind of an ordeal because the first thing that I realized that I needed was that I had a little bit of condensation in the gas tank, and the gas was pretty low. So the first thing that I fixed was just putting more gas in an STP to suck up the alcohol or the water in the gas, and that got the engine running. But then like we went to go out somewhere, and it started to overheat, and so the rest of the week was spent trying to diagnose why my fan wouldn't come on, which was uber frustrating. I finally narrowed it down to the fact that there's a switch that tells the fan if the engine is hot and kicks it on, and that had gone bad. So I drove, because I didn't have a vehicle, I borrowed my dad's truck. He came over Saturday morning or whatever, and I dropped him back off at his house, and I drove all the way over to Pensacola. It's like a 45-minute drive to the one auto parts store that had this piece, Tony. I got this from them. I went back home. I put it in my car, and the one piece in the entire area was faulty. It still didn't work. So
I hate that. Whenever I had my old Firebird and everything, like it seems like every time we tried something, it would get a small system running, and then something else would fail. Like once you start having that sort of decay on a car, it's hard to keep up with.
Well, we're looking at getting another vehicle and stuff, so that this isn't the only one that we're depending on. Because this one's okay for a backup, but it's not great to be depending on full time. So we're trying to replace the transmission in the Dodge that we have, or look for another one. Heard a lot of good stuff about the drivetrains on Hondas and Toyotas. So I've been really focusing on them, trying to get a better, so I'm not in this situation again. Something that'll last
at least get like 10 years out of something instead of like 3.
Yeah. So that's the hope. But things are kind of moving forward, and I've been spending a lot of time fixing problems on my van. My car. I'm tired, Tony.
I know the feeling.
We've got a lot of stuff to come out. I've got to edit all these videos that were supposed to come out for the Mile High Film.
Yeah, we got like a small avalanche of reviews coming out.
Yeah, we've been
video by video by video. At least it's all at least you're not dealing with multicam, but still there's editing and all sorts of little things that have to be done for them.
Been digging more into editing Outlet versus the Asylum some more. So getting that
which
going.
Is coming back as like a season. I don't think we've actually talked about that.
I've mentioned it a couple of times, but I'm trying to release like 10 in a row. So they come out, all at once, and maybe weekly or bi-weekly. I haven't exactly decided, but I want to have a really consistent release schedule going. So I got all the scripts written, and that, I've filmed almost all of them. I lost footage for one, so I have to go back and film them, which is no fun. But those things gotta be done. Everything's got to get done, and I want to get it done on time, and there's still stuff that's scheduled that has to come out. There's not a lot of wiggle room, Tony.
No, our schedule is it's just this giant block of colors, and basically the colors mean you have no time.
Did we get any questions this week, by the way?
We got quite a few, actually, and one of the ones that we wanted to revisit from last week, or not from last week, but from several weeks ago, it was like a 4-part question from John Jones written in poetry form, and I'm trying to pull that up right now. We'll answer the first question, which is actually from Joseph Devon. Who among the group is most likely to be a secret agent, secret superhero, / supervillain?
I want to say me?
Yeah, well,
you're
You're the extreme pacifist and everything, so it's just like a cover for all the murder you commit down in Florida.
Yeah. I have no comment there. My lawyer has instructed me that I'm not allowed to say anything further.
He's just sitting off screen, just shaking his head.
It actually only takes like 5 minutes for me to edit the podcast. That 4-hour block, that's when I go to my secret spy meetings. Serial Killers Anonymous.
It's like the group is I can't think of the word, whatever. The government's paying for something. Subsidizing. There we go. We're subsidizing your supervillainy.
Yes. Well, if you don't, then, terrorists will, Tony, and then that gets really bad.
Yeah, they start selling like cocaine and stuff, all narco style, to pay for supervillains.
I like that idea. I like that, the government just pays for the supervillains to do their thing, so that they don't go off and do it on their own.
Isn't that kind of the premise behind
Death Ray?
Isn't that kind of the premise behind Suicide Squad? Like they kind of unleash them every once in a while to do the bad stuff for them.
Sort of. The Suicide Squad. I'm thinking of supervillains in the sense of the science supervillain, they have all the technology. The Suicide Squad guys are just bad guys with powers.
Yeah. So the Victor Frankensteins out there.
Right, exactly. The army which I guess technically kind of does happen, right? The military subsidizes a lot of shady stuff to see if can we make a soldier that won't die? That would be cool. Back in the day, whatever
figure
that out.
They're subsidizing research on MK Ultra and all this stuff to see if you can use LSD as a form of mind control. All sorts of shady stuff has been sponsored by the government at one point or another.
Yeah, so that's actually not that far off. Somebody needs to write that story. I'm not going to do it, but somebody needs to write a story where the government funds supervillains,
force you into it,
but more in comic book fashion.
We could force you into doing that for the Writers' Arena if we really tried, but that's going to be next year.
I guess I could make it a short story. I don't want to make it a short story. I want to see this as a novel. A good novel, by the way. If you can't write, don't write it. It's good. I'm just kidding. You guys.
Or if you can't write 3 novels and then do this novel. Our next question comes from John Jones, at DB1 on Twitter. Follow him. He's one of the cleverest guys on Twitter. At least one of the cleverest guys I know. He's awesome. Many horror icons of the black and white film days were subsequently a part of a horror comedy craze. Dracula, the Wolfman, and others of that era found themselves the butt of jokes, more of chuckles than of scare. More the butt of chuckles than scares. Abbott and Costello and the Bowery Boys as well were often cast to pit their wits against these fiends from hell. If that film fad should return, what characters would you match from modern comics book stars and horror icons they would catch?
You're terrible at reading poetry, Tony. I just gotta say, it's supposed to sound like it rhymes.
I know, but the lines didn't line up in the screenshot. That's why it was messing with my head.
I want to do it now.
All right, go pull it up.
I have it open right now. Many horror icons of the black and white film days were subsequently part of a horror comedy craze. Dracula, the Wolfman, and others of that era found themselves the butt of jokes, more of chuckles than scare.
Yeah, that line messed me up.
Abbott and Costello and the Bowery Boys as well were often cast to pit their wits against these fiends from hell. If that film fad should return, what characters would you match See, I got tripped up too. If that film fad should return, what characters would you match from modern comic stars and horror icons they could catch.
Well, I imagine, like, the first combo would have to be, like, Seth Rogen and James Franco. But who would they be up against?
Oh, man, like them as, like, stoners, like, going up against,
like the Joker?
Like, the Slenderman's kind of cool.
Yeah, you could definitely do a Slenderman movie with those guys. I would watch that.
What modern, like, if Universal wanted to make a new Mount Rushmore of, like, characters that are already sort of out there in the, you know, in the ether, but, you know, are not like their original ones, who would they do?
Oh, I think Slenderman could definitely be a part of that. You could probably bring the Krampus into it because he's getting more popular now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure that would really be one that you would go for. Like, you could do like a classic death. Like, that's always been a fun thing for that. But to make it like the most iconic death would be pretty hard. You'd have to get some really competent writing behind that. Like, one of my favorite deaths, though, is in Bill and Ted's Bogus Adventure, or it was the second one. I can't remember the exact title offhand. So I don't know. You could do like them versus death. Who do you think?
I think that you could do like there's a way to do a witch movie that I think could be really creepy. Although I think that there actually is a movie called Witch coming out. But if you made like a single iconic scary witch, that you actually see on screen, not like the Blair Witch Project or something. I think that hasn't really been explored that well. And to do it in a way that you could sort of, you know, market it to a lot of people and make a franchise out of it as well would be tricky, but I think doable.
I hope that movie lives up to like how good the trailer is. Like, if we got a really good witch movie, that'd be awesome. I've
read some good stuff, and witches I don't know, like, they've sort of been more comedic, like, for a long time. I can't think of a really scary witch movie where the witch was actually a bad person coming out.
I've seen where it's like the witches are pieces of the movie, and it's pretty good. Like, kind of a witch doctor thing in, like, 13th Warrior and, like, all sorts of different movies where they're best done where it's kind of like they don't have the spotlight on the whole time.
But yeah, I think that like sort of a demonic, kind of like how Minecraft does witches, where they're not really quite people, but they look humanoid, but they've got powers and they're just like almost like mixing them in with the Fae, the fairy legends of, you know, back in Germany. If you kind of brought that in, where, you know, they just weren't, you know, they could talk and everything, but they just weren't quite human. I think that could be, especially with the right face and effects. That sort of paid homage to our classic ideas of witches, but pushed that idea further. That could be messed up.
Skyrim had those. Those were really crazy in Skyrim. Like they were like almost harpy. They started out as human, but like the more they got into the witchcraft, the more they were transformed. And they turned into like these weird harpy creatures. Sleepy Hollow has a pretty crazy witch in there too, but that movie definitely has some problems.
I'm hoping for a good movie, Tony.
Yeah. That had parts, but not many.
What other questions we got?
The next question is, if my phone wants to load, part of the problem with having so many followers on that account is, like, it just locks up my phone occasionally.
Well, I've got one from Rich Alex here that I'm going to read.
All right.
It says, why did Shelley's intelligent artificial man on the page become a dim-witted monster on the screen, and which is scarier?
I think that they just didn't have time, because if I remember right in the book, he started out kind of dim-witted and everything, but then like really quickly accelerated into an intelligent monster.
Well, the book got to do time-lapse stuff too, where he's like, he gets out and he's just sort of like wandering along the countryside and like meeting up with people and kind of sort of, you know, befriending an old blind man and stuff. And there just wasn't time for that in the movie. I think dim-witted is probably, yeah, I mean, he's not super intelligent. I don't know that either one of them, I mean, the Frankenstein in this movie, aside from a couple parts, isn't actually all that scary.
No,
that's not the point of him. You know, the one moment where he's behind the girl in the, you know, in the house, like, coming through the window and she doesn't see him. Like, that's kind of a cool moment of sort of tension. But,
or the moment where he's laying on the table and the doctor's trying to, like, kill him with an overdose, and, like, the hand just starts moving.
Oh, yeah, that was good, too. And it, like, reaches up. But I didn't find him as something like, I'm horrified of this monster. It was more of a, again, they played that pathos very strong. There's moments in the Frankenstein story that I think are maybe a little bit scarier. I mean, the scene when Frankenstein, like, sees that he's actually done it and freaks himself out and, like, goes and, like, just hides in his bed when he sees the thing moving, and then the thing, like, comes and finds him and, like, pushes back the curtain and, like, looks down at him, and he looks down just like, ah! And then the thing just sort of disappears into the night. That's a pretty creepy scene. But, again, I don't know that the point of the monster in the story is for him to be all that scary. The Frankenstein story is more of a revenge story, really, if you think about it. And it almost, I mean, I will say it makes more sense in the book than the movie, because in the book, Frankenstein is a thinking, sort of reacting creature, and he is mad at Frankenstein. I think that they go through the thing where he wants him to build the bride so he doesn't have to be alone. He's like, no,
yeah.
I'm not cool with this, like, not, being normal. You need to make someone for me to be with, because everybody shuns me. And Frankenstein's like, okay, but he doesn't have the stomach for it. And so, because he takes away from, everything that Frankenstein loves, Frankenstein's like, all right, I'm wrecking your shop then. So, that kind of came across better in the book, whereas in the movie, like, when he comes into What's-Her-Face's bedroom and, like, acts like he's going to menace her, it's like, well, what's his motivation here?
Yeah.
But in the book, it made more sense. So, but he doesn't do anything in the movie, so you could argue that maybe he was just going to say hi or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, he just scares her, and she's, like, free, like, she's just laying there, like, kind of Victorian style, passed out, like, I don't know. That was one of the weirder scenes of the movie to me.
But I didn't think that, I felt like that the change from the book made sense for what they were going for at the adaptation. I know a lot of people sort of harp on that, but...
Oh, they had 70 minutes or so to, like...
Yeah, maybe even a little bit less than that. And so I guess it was about, an hour and 10 minutes. So you can't really have him go through this long, sort of talking to people thing. Having him not talk, I thought, was actually a really good choice, because he seemed more, it wasn't dim-witted, but he seemed more childlike and innocent. And the fact that he couldn't talk, it made sense, because the way that she describes it in the book I don't think has ever really been brought to life on the screen, where he fuses the arms and everything together in such a way that it's completely seamless. Whereas, sort of the classic vision of Frankenstein is the stitches and stuff, and that makes sense to us in a visual sense. In Frankenstein, the book, it's just basically a really big guy, who I guess looks weird, but I mean, it's not, the idea is that he's supposed to be a Superman. Not a monster.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's.
But didn't you see the new Ian Eckhart, like, I, Frankenstein?
Aaron Eckhart?
The Superman. Aaron Eckhart, yeah, whatever.
Come on, the guy's a good actor. The fact that he was in an awful movie is not his fault.
Yeah, Thank You for Smoking is probably my favorite with him.
But I couldn't get through that. I tried, but I couldn't
even try. I tried to get through Left Behind the other day, and I made it 11 minutes.
I saw you. Okay, so what was up with that? Because I saw you post that tweet like, all right, here we go. I don't know why I'm doing this. Why were you doing that?
Because we were just, like, chilling, talking about movies for so long, trying to find something on Netflix. And I was like, if we don't make a decision in the next 5 minutes, I'm putting Left Behind on. Because it was just like, I was trying to coerce my friend into watching something. I was like, pick something. I can't pick something. You pick something. And so my hand was forced. I made it 11 minutes.
What happened in those first 11 minutes, Tony? Give me your 11 first minutes of the movie review.
Oh, I remember a lot of it was just like being straight up in awe of Nicolas Cage. I mean, every time he's on the screen, that dude is just like, he's nailing it. He's all about it. Like, I'm such a huge fan of Nicolas Cage, And I, like, then you see just some random people, like one of the girls is from Big Love, and they're talking, and I couldn't tell you what they were talking about. They're getting bitched at by some person that's saying that they're all like evil sinners and everything, and then they like go and have a conversation about how awesome they are because they're atheists, and then like I was like, I'm done with this movie. It's like, this movie is terrible. It's so bad.
So you didn't actually get to the part where everybody disappears?
No, I couldn't even make it that far.
Oh, man. Like, I would think that you would open with that, right? Like, you just start out with, like, you know, people around just, like, you know, pilots and planes disappearing or whatever, and, like, you know, crashes on the like, this, like, that's the single most cinematic moment of the movie. You don't, like, waste time getting to it. Anyway.
Yeah, like, I could see an awesome show or awesome movie being made about, like, the idea of the rapture and everything. Like, I'm pretty sure HBO's got The Leftovers, even though they claim it's not the rapture. That seems to be, like, initially what it's about. And this movie just took too long to do anything, and it was all this melodrama I didn't care about.
It was over 11 minutes before any action came in.
It was probably, like, 17 minutes before action actually started, but I just couldn't make it that far.
Okay.
I've got a pretty high tolerance for bad movies because of you, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't even do it as I was making fun of it.
Speaking of bad movies, I gotta say, while we were at the Mile High Film Festival, I had forgotten, and then I came back and I was so busy with my car and I forgot. But I am so excited because now Sharknado Heart of Sharkness is out, and I am gonna watch that movie, and I'll give you all a review, hopefully next week. I'm so pumped for Sharknado Heart of Sharkness, man. Nobody's talking about it.
It's the fourth in the series? Is it like a prequel, or what is it?
Well, it's sort of a prequel. It's a faux documentary following the making of the original Sharknado that no one saw. They scrapped the original Sharknado and started over. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's not true, but, like, the idea is that, like, the original director was like, I have a vision for this movie. We're going to use real sharks. He's, like, this over-the-top artistic guy, and, like, you know, the auteur director, like, coming on, like, you guys need... Anyway, like, the sort of hipster kind of...
So they basically resurrected Ed Wood with a shark fetish?
What?
So they pretty much resurrected Ed Wood with a shark fetish?
Sort of. Although this guy, I think, thinks more of himself than Ed Wood. Like, Ed Wood is the kind of director that's like, all right, it's good enough. Like, this guy's like, it's not good enough. We need a real tornado with real sharks.
He thinks he's the Stanley Kubrick of his age?
Yes. Like, if you had a guy who thought that he was Stanley Kubrick making Sharknado, what kind of movie would you get? And that's what it's a documentary about that. And I'm super pumped for it, Tony.
I kind of wish we could see that. Like, what would Stanley Kubrick make if he had to make an asylum movie? But he had, like, a full-on budget.
I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of the limitations they have are just time. Like, you could do so much more stuff if you just had time to set up shots and stuff, and the best directors are the ones, for them anyway, the ones that are able to work in that constraints and make, like, okay, well, we, you know, sort of set up things ahead of time and work around so they know what they're wanting to do before they get started. But, you know, it's just, you know, it's rolling through. The same thing with Z Nation. You know, Z Nation's just one of those, again, it's an asylum production where they're just like, all right, shoot it, go, shoot it, go. And really, credit to the actors on that show that they get the performances they do get in as much, like, time that they have, because I think they take, like, 5 days to shoot an episode, which...
Oh, it's got to be nice for them because they're getting to stay in that one character and everything. It's not like an asylum movie where by the time it's over, you're just starting to understand, like, the character.
That's true. You know, multiple, you know, you do have the whole season to go through, and, you know, that I think just generally generally that's true for television. That the actors, you know, assuming that you've cast the role well, will, you know, grow into their roles and really understand them and, you know, be able to do a better job, especially as they move forward, than they would maybe on a television set or a movie set. Sorry. You know, where it's just sort of like you got to get it right the first time. That's one of the things that's a lot harder about acting for a movie. is you've only got the one shot and the one performance, and if you don't understand the character, if you don't get into it, then, that's it.
Yep.
So, very happy with this season of Z Nation, by the way. I don't know if any of y'all watch my recaps or not, but I got back from Colorado, and I was, on top of everything else, I got to do my recap of the 2 episodes that aired that week together. And aside from Zombie Road, which I felt like was a really weak episode, this has been a really strong season. Super happy with the stuff Z Nation's doing. They continue to be the fast-paced, funny, weird zombie show that I enjoy them being. And I'm really looking forward to what's going on with the season. So that's what's going on with the Asylum. They also have Martian Land, Tony.
Really?
Yeah, that one doesn't look good.
I watched the newest episode of The Walking Dead last night, and it's kind of more of the same, but as always, it has some really cool effects and things like that, so I'm just kind of riding that show out.
Did they have the zombie camel, though, Tony?
No,
did they have anthrax zombies?
They had some different zombies this time, but nothing like groundbreaking.
I don't need it quite as much as they throw it in there, but they are like very much about the different type of zombies. This year they had radiation zombies, which go faster. They were killed by the like radiation from the atomic blast that went off at the end of season 1.
Spoilers.
It's been out for a long time. Deal with it. I'm not going back that far. But then they had like plant zombies because they died in like a greenhouse or something, and they all sort of like are connected together in the plant network, which is really cool. And then this latest episode, they had anthrax zombies, which
well, it sounds like they're just going like full pulp with it, and that's kind of awesome. Like, because The Walking Dead can only do so much, like with their zombies, because it's a pretty established rule set for the world. You might see like something different where they kind of herd together, but you're not going to see any like spectacularly different ones. Like one of the cooler scenes that happened last night was like one of these zombies was trying to fit between 2 trucks, and it just like sheared off the front, so you just see like the guts spilling out as it's still walking towards you.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool.
Like you just see like the entire like chest part just like peel off as it like gets between the 2 trucks. Never mind that he probably wouldn't be able to raise his arms anymore because of like pecs and things like that, but whatever.
Yeah, never mind that, Tony. That's but it is, Z Nation has sort of established that type of aesthetic where it's like, okay, these zombies, like it's almost like they've set it up in such a way that zombies sort of integrate into their environments here. So, if they're around, if they're in this, weird greenhouse with all these experimental, stuff that this AgroCorp was growing before the apocalypse, then that affects them and they become plant zombies. If they're around, like they're out in these fields, I guess, and they sort of somehow ate some cows that had been eating anthrax or whatever, it wasn't 100% clear, but then the anthrax will grow in the zombies. So there's sort of the idea that I'm taking away from the Z Nation zombies having all these weird type of zombies is they're very adaptable. They're sort of this organism that kind of just fits in with their environments. And so if something weird pops up, they'll just sort of make that part of themselves. I don't know. It's just pulp. Either one.
Well, it can be both. Like I like the creativity of it. The 3 episodes I saw, I actually did like the show. It's just there's just so much going on that I didn't get to finish it. Yeah. So perhaps I'll be able to binge on it because they are 30-minute episodes.
No, they're not. They're full 42.
45 minutes, I guess.
They just flew by.
Don't
they, Tony? So they just fly by, don't they?
They do. Like I'm also used to like HBO shows, which are like 55 minutes to an hour. So like an hour-long show is 43 minutes, and it feels like a half hour. So I don't know. I'm not against the show. I'm just behind.
It's fine. I understand that most people aren't going to get on board, but I like to talk about it. I like to tell people Z Nation's pretty cool, in my opinion. So I think, check that out if you're of that mindset. And I think we're going to wrap things up, Tony.
All right. So what I want you guys to do, I want you to go to humanechoes.com. First, I want you to check out all the awesome stuff that we're putting up over there. Check out the discussion posts and comment. Check out all of our videos. We're putting out a lot of different stuff for gaming. If you like this show, I think there's a lot of content you're going to like. If you want a free mini podcast every week, check out our Dirt Block. Like, it's such an absurd little Minecraft build, but it turns into a fun conversation with Al, Joseph, and I. The next thing you can do, and this is the best way to support us directly, is to go to the subscription link on the right-hand side, sign up for a $2, $5, $10, $20, or if you're a billionaire, $1,000 a month donation. Then that is the best way to keep this thing running, keep it afloat, and we are really grateful to our subscribers. Grateful enough that we are putting out bonus episodes that you can only get if you are a subscriber.
And those are awesome, by the way.
Yeah, those are so much fun.
Unlike this crap, Tony. I hate having to do this podcast. I really wish we could do all bonus podcasts. I'm just kidding. Really enjoy doing the reviews and stuff, but the bonus podcast is a little bit more freeform, and it's all Joe's responsibility to edit and everything, so we just have fun.
Yeah, it's audio only. Audio only at this point, but that's good. That's fun.
And by the way, don't forget to check out our content on the website, humanechoes.com, where we're reviewing the movies that we saw on the Mile High Horror Film Festival. I think there's going to be a lot of this stuff that's going to be coming your way, and if you want to know whether you should see it, first of all, mostly yes. I don't think we really hated anything from the festival, but go check out what we thought about it and see if it's for you.
Yeah. Go see Darling whenever it comes out.
Definitely see Darling. That one's grown on me. We might actually eventually do a 0.5 episode when it hits DVD or something, Tony. Just to cover that again. I know we have our little short episode, but something. I don't know. That's a great movie. Great movie.
Yep. Anyway, you guys have an awesome week. We will come back with The Mummy next week.
See you later.
Bye.